Good evening and thank you for attending this virtual meeting of the Cabinet today on Wednesday the 5th of August 2020. For those that don't know who my name is Councillor Paul Foster. I'm the leader of the Council and the chair of this committee. Councillor Mick Titherington is Vice Chair and Deputy Leader. Also present with me are officers and other members on the Cabinet and also members not on committee. Please note that this is an audio and video meeting. It is being recorded and the stream will also be live on YouTube. The web address for this is displayed on the agenda for the meeting and this can be found on the Council's website. Members are asked to keep their microphone on mute and only unmute when they wish to speak. If you do not mute yourself, the moderator will do this for you. However, when you do wish to speak, you will obviously need to turn your microphone back on. Members and officers present in the Shield Room are also asked to ensure that they keep their microphones switched off unless they are speaking and to mute themselves afterwards in order to avoid any feedback. Only one microphone across both the Shield Room and the Microsoft Teams can be activated at any one time. Reports will be presented by the relevant portfolio holder, after which I will bring the application into Cabinet for debate. If any member of the Cabinet wishes to speak on a report, you should unmute your microphone and say your name, please. Use the raise your hand feature or use the chat function in the top right hand corner to notify our moderator that you wish to speak. I will then invite you all in order. After Cabinet has considered the reports, I will invite comments from members not on committee, after which I will read out any representations made by members of the public. If the technology does fail for any member of the Cabinet, then I will adjourn the meeting for several minutes to try and resolve the matter. If this is not possible, a new date and time will be organised. And finally, before we commence the meeting, I'd like to bring to your attention that agenda item 11 on the agenda, the land at Four Oaks, has now been withdrawn after we received late submissions. There is now a plan for this to be brought forward in the September Cabinet meeting when the submissions are being fully reviewed by officers. So can I now confirm that all members of the Cabinet, well, they are sat in front of me, so you can hear and communicate for the meeting, so we will press on. Thank you. Apologies for absence. We have no apologies for answers, Darren. No, good. Declarations of interest. I am going to declare an interest in agenda item 7, the business support for COVID-19 and the update of the member working group, as my business is registered within South Ribble and is in receipt of a government grant. This agenda item will be chaired by the Deputy Leader of the Council and I'll take no part in the debate. Are there any other declarations of interest? Go. Okay, agenda item 3, minutes of the last meeting. The minutes of the last meeting held on Wednesday the 24th of June 2020 are attached. Can I have a proposer and a seconder that they're signed as a correct record? Proposed by Councillor Titherington, seconded by Councillor Tomlinson. Have any members of the Cabinet got any points on the minutes that they wish to bring up? Any members not on Cabinet? Okay, those minutes are signed as a correct record. Moving on, agenda item 4, which is the Cabinet forward plan. Just a comment from me on this item before I invite any other questions is there's a few items on there, Chris, that have been superseded and been dealt with. So can we please try and make sure that for the next meeting that the forward plan is updated? And there's one or two minor errors in there as well. There was where there was reports stated as being at today's meeting and clearly aren't. I think the council housing strategy is one of them. So if we can just have that looked at and updated for the next meeting. Other than that, members will all note that there is a lot of business coming up in the next few weeks and months. And I invite any questions that any members of the Cabinet may have on the forward plan. No questions. Any questions from members not on committee? Councillor Ogilvie.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just as a member of the licensing committee, I note that on pages 18 and 19 there's a couple of items, private hire vehicle livery and proposal of annual licensing of vehicles. which went through licensing some considerable time ago. And it says earliest date decision can be taken as the 22nd of July. I'm just wondering, is there some reason why it's not come through yet?
Dave Whelan.
Thank you, Chair. The intention had been to take those policies to the last full council, but it had a heavy agenda, so it'll be going to the next available council. Obviously, it's been delayed in part because of the COVID situation, but we were ready to go to the last council, but it was just too heavy an agenda, so it'll be going to the next available council.
Thanks, Dave. You all right with that, Alan? Yep.
I suppose the only follow-on really is I take it that there's no impact to, say, the taxi trade as a result of it not being passed at a time when we thought it was going to be passed.
Through you, Chair, no, I don't think there'll be any negative impact on the trade.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Mrs Smith.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. You just mentioned before about the council's housing delivery programme. When did you say it will now be coming to council or cabinet? I didn't quite catch it. Thank you.
I didn't actually say a date, Margaret. I'm hoping it's the next meeting of the cabinet. I'm looking at Chris, which is September. Yeah, I think it's the next meeting of the cabinet, Margaret, which is middle of September. Okay, any other questions from anyone? Councillor Colin Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of queries. As it's the forward plan for the whole year, the whole financial year, I just wondered why perhaps there's two issues which I thought might have been on, and that's the Phase 2 proposals for the Business and Conference Centre, and also the annual review of fees and charges, which I think are going to be important and shouldn't be overlooked or delayed for this year. Thank you.
The forward plan is a continually updated document, and so they will go on, but often what happens is it focuses on the meetings that are coming up over the next 2 or 3 months. If people are particularly interested in any agenda items that you're expecting to see, we can provide an update on them.
Yeah, I just think it's important at some stage. I know we've got problems with COVID at the moment, but to have in place the proposals approved and ready to go for Phase 2 of the Business and Conference Centre. Otherwise, it'll just be delayed and delayed.
Yeah, I can assure you, Colin, that work is going on in the background, and I'll ensure that this the forward plan is updated accordingly. Any other questions? No. Good. Let's move on to agenda item 5, which is the South Ribble Local Prevention Zone Framework. Bear with me while I just bring this up. So the South Ribble Local Prevention Zone Framework sets out how the council will work with partners, businesses and the public at a local level to prevent, contain and manage outbreaks of COVID-19. Successful local management will break the chains of COVID transmission to enable people to return to and maintain a more normal way of life. Now, this is something that we've asked the officers to now place on the agenda of every cabinet meeting moving forward until we've got on top of and hopefully the pandemic is at an end. So it could be on the agenda for some considerable time. It's the same with agenda item 6, which was the updates on the community hub. I'm now going to ask Jem Mullin to brief members of the cabinet on the detail within the report, because this is very fast moving and there's been some potentially significant changes since the report was published last week. So Jen, can you introduce the report, please?
Thank you. Right, you're right, we have had some significant changes. One of the significant changes being that South Ribble is now RAG rated red rather than green. So Public Health England have been doing quite a lot of analyses of cases and reports, and we've been RAG rated as red, like most local authorities in Lancashire, not because of our numbers of cases or because of the percentage of cases per 100,000 population, but because the mean levels of cases per day has gone up. So To simplify it, if the mean level for South Ribble for a day would be 1 case per day, and within the last 12 days, we've had 2 days where there's been more than 1 case. So one day we had 3 cases and one day we had 2 cases. So in the last 7 days, we've had 5 cases of coronavirus in South Ribble, but because they came in on 2 days, that means the mean is higher than what would be expected for South Ribble, and the mean being 1. So to cut long story short, we haven't got a large number of COVID cases. We haven't got an outbreak of any sort. We've got no outbreaks in businesses or in our care homes. But we have had a slight increase of what's expected in our district. So this plan really is a plan that we have been putting in place to look at how do we control it. So really, from our point of view, the main priority now for us in South Ribble is the prevention, is the controlling, and is the support that we can do to our businesses. So what we've been doing is, especially in our environmental health team, is working with businesses to reduce the rates, to work with them, advise them, and provide guidance and support to control and make their workplaces COVID safe. And we've also been doing a comms plan to look at how we can support people to understand the guidance that have been issued and to understand the legislation that we have. So that is our main priority at the moment. And then also to get things in place that if we do, for whatever reason, have an increase in the numbers of people who've been diagnosed with coronavirus to the levels that we've seen in other local authorities in Lancashire, Blackburn with Darwin or Hyndburn and Pendle, that we can put actions in place pretty quickly, such as community testing stations, such as a test and trace system. So at the moment, we're getting things prepared and ready. The plan that you see in the Cabinet report is completely different now. It's been updated, and as I say, it's a complete dynamic document. So we are updating this on a daily basis. So you can see that there is an action summary. Again, it's been updated. You can see there's a communication plan. You can also see that we're doing a dynamic risk-based response. So from a national guidance point of view, we are risk rated green for our response, that we are continuing with the response that we've got now. And then if we do potentially go into the amber response, this is when we'll start kicking in all the other control measures, such as the test and trace system and the community mobile testing stations. But at the moment, we are visiting and supporting businesses. And as you can see, there's also a summary there of the powers that we can use if businesses aren't in compliance with the COVID safe legislation. Thanks.
Thanks, Jen. And the first thing I'd like to say is that thank you for the unit team, because it's these plans have been delegated now down to the district councils, and it's an exceptionally thorough, detailed, workable plan that we have in place, and that's particularly pleasing to see. The accepted as well that as we discuss this, we do discuss this on a daily basis, that the statistics do change. There is a real frustration here with the data, isn't there? And a real frustration. And one of the things I want to say publicly to our community is there's no reason to be alarmed. This isn't deaths that have been highlighted. It's positive tests, and it goes to prove, I suppose, in many respects that we've got to be very, very careful with the data and how it is presented, because even within that report that you've just, it's conflicting, but the national triggers are different to the local triggers, and it just adds to confusion. And I think if there's anything we could ask you to do as officers through the Resilience Forum is keep pushing back, Jen, that we need accurate data that's workable and usable. We've noticed in the report, particularly within the Resilience Forum, that there's still no postcode specific data for infection, which I find absolutely astonishing. So we need to push back hard and keep managing this process. Hopefully we'll never get to the position in South Ribble of an amber alert, if that's the correct terminology, Jen, where we do have to impose in further restrictions. The concern we do have, though, is that our neighbouring authority, Preston, is being in the national and regional headlines again today, where they are concerned that there is a spike in infections, and we've got to be open about this. There is a risk if any further restrictions are placed on Preston, us as a neighbouring authority may be impacted as well, as has happened in Greater Manchester, where there was a number of authorities within Greater Manchester that were still green or amber, but they had the same restriction imposed upon them because of what was happening elsewhere. So this is fast moving. We need to keep on top of it, and at least we now have, Jen, as you see, you've produced the detailed action plan that we just need to keep monitoring, and any support you need, as you know, any additional support you need, it's there for you. So is there any questions from any members on Cabinet? Councillor Titherington?
Yeah, I think you're right in terms of reassuring the public and our residents, because just looking at the method of how you calculate or how you measure this, I mean, it does give a distorted picture. So, I mean, in one sense, that because of a slight increase in the numbers that are being, diagnosed, is that we now move from green to red. And then if you look at the dynamic risk-based response framework, and you look at what it says red there, it says reintroducing local lockdown measures. So I think we've got to be very, very careful just how we present, first of all, the measurements and the figures to make sure, I mean, because reading that without the explanation that's being given from the officer tonight, I think it would send to the average person alarm bells. So our communication strategy with this has got to be handled sensitively, and we've got to make sure that we do get the message and reassure our residents.
Thanks, Mick, and hence I think all members can see as well now why it's critical that this report does come to every meeting of the Cabinet now, so it can be closely monitored. Any other members on Cabinet? Any members not on Cabinet have any questions? So it's Councillor Ogilvie, then Councillor Mrs Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a bit of clarification on the action plan on page 31. Item 11, legal powers available for enforcement activities, which sounds pretty important to me. It says there's a document being prepared. A, has that been done, or B, is there a drop dead date by which that legal power has been given to us? Thanks.
Well, to bring Jen in, there's a delegated decision that has gone through today with updating the policy. But do you want to dive in there, Jen?
Yeah. So the policies have been updated. We have had a communication today from County about how they're going to use their powers and how they're going to basically delegate their powers through to us, because the powers, some of the powers have come to the Borough Council, but the actual COVID powers to close premises have gone to the upper tier Lancashire County Council. So they can direct us, or we can ask them to take their powers and do enforcement action. So they have developed basically a framework and of how we do that and what information that we've got to provide to use those powers via County Council.
Just before I bring you back, Alan, you'll understand the challenges we're having here, because you'll have all seen that in Preston over the weekend, where the nightclub ended up opening as a pub with music, because they challenged the legal, they didn't play the game as far as I'm concerned, and the Preston tried their best and then were legally challenged, and so it isn't straight. None of this is straightforward, hence why there's all the work going on in the background. You'd have a follow-up, Alan?
Yeah, again, just a bit of further clarification. So I did see there's a policy document that was issued this afternoon, but it was dated March 2020, which seemed a bit strange based on the fact that documents are being prepared week commencing 27th of July. Is it one and the same document, or am I getting my wires crossed somewhere?
No, there's loads of documents. That is the enforcement of policy that we've updated, but there is also COVID documents specific to COVID legislation, which is the ones that I was talking about for today.
So if we're in a position where we can publish it, Alan, we will, and we'll make sure you copied into it all. Margaret?
Thank you. Very much welcome the document, and obviously, very much welcome the document, and obviously you've got the support of the Conservative group in this very difficult time. There was just a couple of things that I just would like to ask the question on. One of them is on the same page as Councillor Ogilvie, page 31, which is the gap in the local testing. If we do get to a stage where we are doing local testing, will we make sure that there is plenty of publicity so people will actually know in the community where they can come, because there is nowhere in South Ribble at this moment in time where we can go. And the other day I was speaking to the interim chief executive, funnily enough, about the following report, where it has got the postcodes of where the community hub has been operating. And I did ask at the time, did he have a postcode for where the amount of infection rates were higher? And he said he did have that, and he would get it to me. I'm just understanding that you said that you didn't. We don't have the postcode detail at the moment. Is that true? I don't know which way around we are.
It's the information I've seen, Councillor Mrs Smith, is that we've only have the detail by wards, and that was issued yesterday, I think it was, or it's certainly been issued recently, Margaret, that the infection and the death rates for individual wards within South Ribble is available now. But we still, as far as I'm sat here today, and as I'm told others, we still do not have the postcode data available to us.
Yeah, the postcode data is available to the upper tier authority. What we don't have as the Borough Council is the postcode data as of today. I know it is available. I have asked Saxy, the Public Health Director, for that information. I just haven't got it to hand. One of our officers is chasing it through as well through their contacts in Public Health England. So we're hoping to get that pretty quickly, but we just don't have it to hand at the moment.
I think that would be very helpful because, as has been said, it's a very fast-moving situation, and this document, while it is very helpful, the following document, which is the resilience form, is almost out of date by the time you get round to reading it. So as much information that can be passed down to the councillors would be helpful, so we can then reassure our residents and pass it along the line that this going from green to red isn't as dramatic as it sounds, and that we are containing as much as we can the situation that we are actually in. Thank you.
There's certain issues, isn't there, Margaret, that the politics is put to one side, and this is certainly it. And we'll happily work as close as we can with you with this, because we share your frustrations, and there's only one way for this to go, and that's to protect the community as best we can. Again, I share your frustrations with the gap in the testing as well. It's just it's appalling, and we are going to sort it if we need to sort it ourselves. And I've spoke with the chief exec about, we might even set up our own testing station in the car park there if that's what we need to do to support our communities. Councillor Phil Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I welcome the report and looked at it in great detail, and I think it does cover a lot of the eventualities. As it says, it's a dynamic report, says that several times. But in that, and you're quite right, it should come to every cabinet meeting and be updated at every cabinet meeting. But what I would request is that councillors are informed of the information that Jennifer's now got perhaps on a daily basis or a weekly basis. If it is that dynamic and this report is now out of date, we're reading an out of date report, we need our internal communication to work a lot better than that and a lot quicker than that. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. And if you remember, Darren was sending out a weekly update if you remember on a Friday, and I think we'll look to update the dashboard, shall we say. And the other thing I will give you, individual councillors, if there are any issues that we find, any local clusters in individual wards, we'll absolutely ensure that local councillors are the first to know. We need to manage this together. Any other questions? Councillor Colin Clark.
Thank you, Chair. I notice the report identifies a new post has been created. Am I correct in assuming that's going to be a temporary post? And it says it's a practitioner, so I'm just wondering if you can give us some information as far as the qualification of that practitioner is concerned, and perhaps name the person who's appointed. I'd like to know for general interest.
Okay, Jen?
Yeah, she started on Monday. Her name's Alison O'Sullivan. She's got a master's in public health. She's worked in environmental health before. So she is helping the council. The post is temporary. It's a 12-month post. It's being funded by the county council. So the county council has funded the post for us, but it will be based in South Ribble and based in Chorley. So she's started. And she's doing an amazing job so far already.
Yeah, we wish her the best, Jen. She's going to be busy. Colin?
Good, thanks for that. Thanks for that information. That's good.
Right, thanks, Colin. Any other questions from members? Any members that are dialing in? Any points to raise? No, good. Right, thanks, Jen. And again, as I say to you always, you've got our absolute and complete support, and we thank you and the team for the sterling efforts in trying to control this appalling pandemic locally. Moving on then, so we're then on the same agenda item 6, the same theme is the South Ribble Together community hubs. And just before I bring Jen in, all members will be aware that for all the wrong reasons, the community hubs have been an overwhelming success, if that makes sense. You know, we had to gear up very, very quickly back in March, and you know, a tremendous effort by the officers, and the community hubs have worked really well in supporting our local community in the provision of food, in the provision of support, in the provision of telephone support, in the provision of even collecting prescriptions, as members are acutely aware. And it's members have been involved in this as well. There's members that have been ringing around the vulnerable and the shielded. And so again, what we've asked Jen and the team to do is keep us updated as councillors as to the work that the community hubs do. You know, we're none of us are foolish enough to think that there won't be a second spike, and those community hubs will still be required. Of course they will, and therefore we need to be at a high level of preparedness for hitting that spike and getting these hubs up and running and out there in the community as quickly as we possibly can. So given those brief comments from me, Jen, have you anything you'd like to add?
Just to add that even though the government shielding has come to an end or been paused, that's the word for it, it's been paused. What we wanted to be clear to our residents, and what we did was we wrote to all our residents to say that the hub is still there for residents who are concerned, that if those people who are shielding want to continue to be shielding, we are there to support them. But we've been working to make this as sustainable as possible moving forward, and we've developed really good relationships with our partners. We've been working with Citizens Advice, the schools. We've been working with the police on South Ribble Integrated Team, just to make sure that we can sustain this going forward in the future. So the report looks about what we can retain, or work we're continuing, what work we can transfer, and what we're going to be developing with our partners, which includes partnership working. One of the things that has come up quite a number of occasions, not just in our community hub, but also in the business hub, is the impact of COVID-19 on mental health. We've had quite a number of people who are quite severely suffering with mental health, and we've been able to signpost people to the right agencies. But what we need to really do is to look at and to investigate the impact of COVID on mental health and how it's being responded to, and see if there's anything us as a council can do to support that response. So that was one of the recommendations, that we need to do a bit more research in that area, just to really understand it, because it's been brought up anecdotally by quite a number of people, business owners and members of the public. You can see in the attached appendices the areas of concern that we've had in the particular areas of the district, so you can see which areas have been affected the most. And also we just thought it'd be interesting to put some case studies, so you can see the actual cases that we've been dealing with, just a selection of them, to see what difference the hub has made to people's lives in practical ways, just to show that mental health has been an issue that we really do need to look at a bit further. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. And on the mental health, and it's an area that we're working on, as you know, within the new corporate plan that's to be the refresh that's been delivered to council in late September. It is a real priority, and I think the cabinet are really keen to see some positive outcomes from this really quickly. I know it's not straightforward. We all know it's not straightforward, but it is a huge issue for our local community, and we need to be right on top of it as quickly as we can, please. And we look forward to any recommendations you want to bring forward. Again, I found the maps interesting on the dashboard. And again, we ask you to keep those updated, Jen, when we present these, because I do see those areas of need, for want of a better word, expanding slightly as we move forward. Hopefully they won't, but hopefully I'm incorrect in my statement, but I just suspect that the yellows could turn to red and some of the greens will most certainly go amber as the demand will increase. For the hub, I know Rebecca's sat here. Rebecca, thank you. I know you've been championing this as well in the community, and please do keep that up. These hubs are so critically important, they really are. Any questions from any members on Cabinet? Mick?
Paul. Sorry, Paul. Sorry, Chair. It's a statement rather than a question. I think, like many councillors who've been unable to kind of go out into the community too much, we've been phoning vulnerable people in South Ribble, and I know from my experience there has been a lot of worry, and the letter that was sent out by South Ribble made that so much easier for these people to understand that the support and help is still there. And certainly the people I talk to are really, really very thankful for that communication.
Yeah, thanks, Sue. I think it's a really important point, and Jen made it, didn't she, that the national shielding, for want of a better word, may have come to an end, but most certainly locally we've made the decision that that's not the case. And that is, again, it's not a political statement. We just feel we've got the resources, and we feel we should be still shielding a number of individuals within the community. Mick, did you want to come in?
Well, yeah, amongst the recommendations, it does say on 3 to acknowledge the work of the South Ribble Together Community Hub, and I don't think we can express our appreciation and thanks for the work that our officers have carried out in making it, all those things that have been described in here happening, because I think, I've said it before, they've gone above and beyond, and I think we've also need to recognise that there has been a number of people who have emerged from the community who have inputted into helping to make sure that we do get all those things that are described about getting food parcels out and collecting medicines and delivering medicines, and generally making contact with those that are vulnerable or feeling lonely and isolated. So, I think we reiterate our thanks for that, and I also welcome the report that's come forward that we are going to continue with that. And like you, Chair, I think there has been, I think it's probably gone beyond anecdotal messages that are coming through, is that we do know that the mental strain that is being put on people, from the young right through to the old, is uncalculable, really. And so it is important that we do carry out the necessary investigations to establish what we can do to help and alleviate some of the pressures that have been imposed on people because of the of COVID. So, I think it's a welcome report to receive, and I wholeheartedly support the recommendations.
Thanks, Mick. Any other councillors? Councillor Colin Clark.
Thanks, Chair. I just wondered, the organisation which has the primary responsibility for mental health issues is Lancashire and South Cumbria NHS Foundation Trust. So the question I wanted to ask was, is there going to be some interface with them, because they're going to have quite a lot of information as far as the report's concerned, and they don't want us to sound off as a council and preempt some of the things they might be saying.
Colin, we are already speaking to them, and we're asking them how we can support them and how they can support us. And it could be, in some instances, it's just better signposting from the community hubs to the services that the NHS support. We're not trying to take over the NHS service, but clearly we're not. But what we are doing is we know that there's a huge demand. We all know that, and it could be just signposting, but it may be more than that. For example, Councillor Flannery's here. I know he's been offering support to local businesses and business owners by picking up the phone and ringing them and giving them support in that way. So this is the additional help that we're offering. But yeah, we are speaking to our partners and seeing what we can do to support our local community. But understood in your points, points noted.
The point I'm making, really, it should have been perhaps appropriate to mention that within the report. Any other questions from anyone? Councillor Flannery?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just as unplanned comment, really. I would just like to comment from an experience we've had working with the officers, obviously in Penwith, and a call for help and support through the food banks and the reactive service which the council's provided. Rebecca's here tonight, and she's at the end, and I wasn't expecting her to be here, but her work has been unbelievable. The amount of people, the amount of phone calls we've had, and she's on the phone the weekends, late evenings. I've seen her with filling a car with stuff to drop bags off on the way home from work. She's been outstanding, so I just thought it'd be appropriate for me to comment on that. So well done, Rebecca and the team.
Thanks, Jane. I fully endorse those comments. Councillor Ogilvie.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I too welcome this report and the recommendations that are mentioned therein. There's clearly been a lot of excellent and very hard work done by a lot of people, and we owe our thanks to them. Just one very nitpicky observation: the maps at the back, which are very useful, would it be possible to get them marked out with the current ward boundaries rather than the old ward boundaries?
Good point, Alan, and it has been raised by the Cabinet. There's a couple of reports that have come from the County Council as well with the old wards on. So we're just cleansing the data, Alan. It's not a nitpicky. It's a relevant point with that wards that no longer exist shouldn't be quoted. Any other questions, Councillor Phil Smith?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just with regard to the mental health issue. It's obviously something that's almost impossible for this council to deal with, but I think putting it in the report is important, and recognising that it is an issue is important as well. So I think as long as that is recognised as an issue, and whatever actions we take in the near future, obviously recognise that within the report itself. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Any other councillors? Okay. One thing I've just realised, Darren, in my haste, we didn't vote on the agenda item 5. So let's just go back, if we may, to agenda item 5. These tablets, all of them, honestly. So agenda item 5, the recommendation was for Cabinet to approve the South Ribble Local Prevention Zone Framework, and notes that this is a dynamic document that will be amended on a frequent basis in line with the dynamic risk-based response. Again, I'd just like a second recommendation in there that this comes forward to every Cabinet meeting until further notice. I'm happy to propose that. Do I have a seconder? All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. I do apologise about that. So then moving to agenda item 6 now, where we were. There are 3 portfolio recommendations. To acknowledge the work of the South Ribble Together Community Hub, which we're happy to do, and reiterate again, the work that the officers are doing for their local communities is second to none. It really is second to none. And we're all proud to be associated with it. The next recommendation is to note the plans to sustain COVID-19 related community support going forward. And the third recommendation is to request that Cabinet investigate the impact of COVID-19 on the mental health within the South Ribble area and how this is being responded to. So I'm happy to propose those recommendations. Do I have a seconder? Let's make all those in favour. Yeah, thank you. Unanimous. So I am now going to leave the...
Okay, item number 7 is the Business Support COVID-19 Member Working Group. And can I ask Councillor Bill Evans to introduce this item?
Thank you, Chair. It's my pleasure to present this report tonight. The Member Working Group was formed as part of a response to the pandemic with a request to feedback to Cabinet on a regular basis, so we will be doing. There's a number of recommendations for Cabinet to support tonight. The first meeting of the working group was held on the 10th of June, where some terms of reference were agreed, and we're asking Cabinet to support them tonight as well. The report says they've met 6 times. They haven't. They've been meeting on a weekly basis. Paragraph 11 tells you who the membership is, and I'm going to hand over to Councillor Flannery to explain what he's been doing in his group. To date, the group has received views from local estate agents, representatives from Federation of Small Businesses, and they've even been talking to the Leyland Town team, so they have been quite busy. And there's also, at the back end of the report, paragraph 19, there's a number of key issues there. You'll notice that it's mentioned partway down the mental health of business owners as well as employees, which is one of the things that they're going to consider. But yeah, can I hand over to Councillor Flannery?
Thanks, Bill. Okay, thanks, Chair. Just an abstract, really, in terms of an update. I think we all, understand and realise we're faced with a unique set of challenges at the moment. Completely unforeseen, completely immediate, and obviously there was a number of support mechanisms released by the government which have helped in lots of respects. But what happened was we identified very quickly a borough like South Ribble has a lot of small and micro businesses, and these were falling sort of outside of the standard government and support initiatives. So we convened a working group where one of the key features has been, as Bill's just set out, listening to the businesses. And one of the key themes has been the feedback we've been getting anyway, is saying it's been really, really positive that businesses have had the opportunity to feedback to members and officers, because sometimes that can be difficult, and it's something I think we need to learn from. But in terms of that element of it, listening, finding out, seeing what we can do to support, there was a number of these things which did develop. I know Bill's has referred to one, but they were just very quickly a general feeling of uncertainty, of fear, and at the time, because we met every week, the commitment's been fantastic from the members and officers. They were talking about then even an uncertain, what is the new future? And obviously what we're seeing now is spikes emerging on like a second wave, a contraction of the economy, an understanding of what the new norm would be. I think it's something that the percentage of SMEs in the borough is quite significant. And I know all those individual businesses are quite small, but they make up a lot of the employment in terms of what people do. Cash flow is an issue. Again, the discretionary grants which we've focused on have been very helpful. Bill's just mentioned the mental health. It's quite an interesting, because as a business owner myself and some of my colleagues on the working group are the same. A lot of the support, if you analyse it and think about it, it's to help the economy, it's to help businesses, it's to help through the furlough scheme. But as a business owner, there genuinely isn't anything for a business owner other than the option of debt beyond the COVID, beyond this experience. So most businesses, most small SME business owners, to keep going, have considered and will have took on a lot of debt. One of the major banks today has decided they're going to write off over 2 billion of that debt because it's not going to be paid back. That to me as a business owner means if it's not getting paid back, that the business will no longer be there. The Federation of Small Businesses gave us evidence that up to 40% of SMEs could be at risk in the autumn and winter months. So it's quite a serious issue here which we've tried to address. Couple of other little bits around signage and messaging from the Borough Council in terms of what we should be doing, what we can do. Again, we took it on board, and I think the officers have took them actions and they're actually doing stuff with them now. But one of the fundamental ones again was insurance. The insurance industry, people have been paying the premiums for many years. The feedback we're getting off businesses is they're just not playing ball. They're just not considering what's actually going on, and they're not seeing it as a real and immediate issue. A couple of more points before I finish. The membership of the board, Councillor Phil Smith, Councillor David Howarth, Councillor Will Adams, and the officers, they've demonstrated a great level for, as a chair to understand what their experiences are, and they've been very empathetic with the businesses, because we're talking about people who have got some serious issues about the future. The empathy's been brilliant. Their experience and the balance and knowledge has been second to none. So I want to thank the members and the officers for doing contributing to a great job so far, because obviously this is a fluid situation which we're facing. Just in terms of the discretionary, there is some data which there's a dashboard there, but we are facing a challenge, and the challenge is the criteria for giving out the discretionary grants is very, very onerous, and it's very, very difficult to get through. Therefore, we're not getting through as many as we would like, but I can assure you that the officers are working tirelessly to address that, and we've got a meeting tomorrow morning to push through as many as we can. We have had a letter from Cabinet Office to say there's a deadline, but that deadline's been extended to September now in terms of us being able to provide the money. So just in conclusion, and thanks for the opportunity to give you an update, we are facing a very fluid economic situation, very challenging one, but thanks to the members and the officers, I think South Ribble have done their bit so far, so well done to everyone involved. Thank you.
Thanks for that. I think from the Cabinet point of view, we'd want to add our thanks to the members of the working group. You gave quite a detailed report there, Councillor Flannery, and I think we share the concerns. It's been said continuously, we're in unprecedented times, and we really look to the future with some trepidation. So anything that we can do to help businesses locally, we should be doing it. And I think the working group have taken that on board, and I do commend them for the work that they've done. I just one comment in terms of the grants. I mean, I realise that you've identified the difficulties in also some of the criteria. It makes it difficult for some of the smaller businesses to apply for the grants, and I hope that we can the working group, with the help of the officers, can sort of resolve that in some way, because the last thing that I'm sure that we would not want to see is the fact that we are not using all of the grants that's made available to us from central government. So it's something that we've really got to concentrate our minds, and I'm sure that the working group will do on that particular aspect. Are there any comments or questions from the Cabinet? No. Any from members not on the Cabinet? Councillor Bredesen?
Yeah, hi. It's just regarding the discretionary grants, and there's quite a high percentage there of provisionally rejected. Could you give us an explanation of why they're rejected? Is there any common theme why applications are being rejected?
Do you want me to answer that, or Jennifer? Do you want to answer that, Jennifer? I'm not surprised. It's effectively a combination of two things. The criteria is comprehensive, but you're also dealing with small and micro businesses who are probably not, as Phil's pointed out on many occasions, may not be as organised as more established larger businesses. So some of the information they are asked to provide, they may not have to hand as such. And I think it's a combination of that and really, the process. It is very, very difficult. it's more difficult to apply for a £5,000 discretionary grant than it is for a £50,000 bounce back loan. It's easier to get £50,000 than £5,000 off the local authority. But so that is the issue, and the officers are trying to untangle that every day. We've actually just set up. We had the idea of having a discretionary panel was for us to have some influence in that, and I think we're the only authority who are doing the discretionary, i.e. our perspectives are also factored in to get to the new dozens. But we have to be very careful due to order purposes.
It's okay if I just add that we have got a team of officers who are supporting the businesses to be able to fill in the grant paperwork, because it is difficult. And we have got officers who are liaising with businesses to make sure that they're filling them in correctly and making sure that they've got the correct documentation.
Paul Hussey, do you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just in addition to the comments made by Councillor Flannery, really, in terms of update, in terms of the grant position, in terms of the small grants and the retail grants, the latest position is a further 11 business grants have been approved, which totals 150,000. And the window is reopened for the discretionary grants, and a further 15 grants have been approved since the 24th of July date, which equates to a further 75,000. The main issue in terms of the discretionary grants, of course, has been pointed out with regard to the evidencing of loss of income. So we are working very closely with the respective businesses in terms of supporting them through that process. But that's the main sort of thrust. But as Councillor Flannery has pointed out, we are working very closely with businesses and as officers to try and support that process moving forward. And of course, the final thing I want to say is that officers will continue to make as many payments as possible. We do have a further period of time now that the process is allowed up to the end of September 2020, which will allow us to do obviously process more grants than previously, which is helpful. And again, as Councillor Flannery pointed out, we have been working on the preparations of a paper to summarise the options for using the remaining funds going forward. And we've been working very closely with the interim chief executive and the section 151 officer in relation to that. And I don't know whether James Thompson, you wish to add any further comments with regard to that piece. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thanks, Paul. Yeah, do you want to come in, James?
Yeah, just to note that some of those rejected, the numbers for the rejected claims, we've actually advised them to go and claim for the much bigger, the small business grants or retail, hospitality and leisure. It seems that they didn't think they were eligible, but our officers have advised them that they are. So it's not all flat out rejected. A lot of those will actually receive money as well.
Councillor Green.
Thanks, Chairman. Can I first of all thank the officers? If you look at the amount of grants that have been paid out by this authority on behalf of the government, it's an impressive number and it's an impressive percentage of the businesses that were eligible. So thank you very much to the officers for the amount of work that they've put into doing that, which is invaluable support for those businesses. Turning to the discretionary grants, obviously a lot has been talked about that and some of the issues why these have not been allocated and some of the challenges. But obviously that figure is disappointing at this stage, and I'm just wondering what further steps the council is looking at taking to get more of these grants through the doors, because there are businesses out there in South Ribble that are very much struggling and don't fit into the other criteria, and that little bit of support could make a massive difference in terms of the viability of those businesses moving forward. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Well, I think that's been recognised in the contributions from Paul Hussey and James Thompson. Councillor Smith. Councillor Paul Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things with regard to the number of applications. It says provisionally rejected. was made quite clear at the last meeting that they're actually not rejected. It's ones that are actually in the process of being processed. So there are some rejected ones, but there are some that are not complete. And the ones that are not complete are in that 46. So they've not been rejected out of hand. They're still in the process. So they're still looking at those. And with regard to the numbers and percentages, yeah, they are impressive, and I know the council's worked very hard on processing the larger claims, the small business grants, if you like, and the medium business grants or the large business grants. So those have gone quite well. The discretionary grants, of course, came in a lot later, and they came in. It was extra money from government that was put forward to try and sort of plug the gaps, and it was made very clear that all the gaps would not be plugged. I mean, it was not possible for everybody to receive exactly what they wanted, but it's there for a reason. It's there to plug the gaps, and the committee, as far as I'm concerned, I won't say put pressure on, but try to get the officers to move it along a lot quicker than it has been moved along, and I think that's important. The main reason, I think, if I'm not mistaken, and I've heard it twice now, is that that these are mainly processed by the finance department. Now, there has been a vacancy in the finance department, which has, I would say, left a bit of a hole, but that vacancy apparently has now been filled, and things will start moving along a lot quicker on that particular one, because they're going to focus on processing those claims a lot quicker. Nice to know the deadline, as of today, from the sound of it, has gone to September rather than August, and that's good to see. So I would be very confident that we could push those along a lot quicker and get to the businesses that we need to get to. One thing that we did discuss at the last meeting, and it's something I put forward, and with regard to the portfolio recommendations, and that's not been brought forward tonight, it'd be nice to see if one of the cabinet members would propose that, is that at the meetings that we've had from the members from businesses, which have been quite useful, I have to say, and this is where a lot of the sort of the health issues came along, but they've all recognised, and I'm just sort of quoting here, that the government of the council have done really well. The government support has been good, and that's from a couple of them. And then Paul Foster, would you believe it or not, who's the head of the Federation of Small Businesses, who's somebody I've known for some while. The government grant system has done a good job, and is supporting and again, it's recognised that the council have done a good job in moving this forward, and done a good job in actually creating this committee to try and update and move things forward and make sure that the money goes where it should be going. So it'd be nice if within the portfolio recommendations, and it's not for me to put it forward, but I was hoping the chairman was going to do that, because we did discuss it, that at least the work of the council and the work of the money that the government have put in be recognised within that report. I mean, in the top total, of course, it's 18,745,000. That's not an insignificant sum in South Ribble, I have to say, and it's not finished yet. So that's it with me. I think I welcome the committee's input. To be quite honest, it's been a good committee. We've shared a lot of information, a lot of detail, and it's certainly not been any political meeting of any way, shape or form. Thank you, Chair.
Good. I think we'd be willing to sort of acknowledge the work of the council and the government. We've had those grants, so I'm open with that. But can I just clarify one thing in terms of the processing of these applications? It hasn't been down to a capacity within the council, has it?
The biggest issue for much of the discretionary element has been actually around the understanding of the criteria for the discretionary, because there have still been criteria that have changed quite a lot during the period. That is something that actually, looking across the councils that I'm involved with in terms of shared services, both Chorley and South Ribble have struggled with, because it's been a changing picture. We both serve economies that have quite very small businesses, and the point that Jennifer made earlier is the important one, which is actually we have had to provide quite a lot of support to those small businesses to help them to gather the information in the right way. One of the elements that needed greater support was around the advice and interpretation of those rules and criteria, and that's something that James has been leading on, but has now got some additional capacity. I don't think it fundamentally has slowed it down in terms of the grants that have been processed, and I suspect we probably still will be in a similar position because of those changing criteria.
Has anybody else wants to come in? No, I'm looking at you to tell you. Yeah, okay. Do you want to come in, Councillor Evans?
Well, I think it'd be prudent to alter some of the bullet points, considering what's been mentioned. I'd like to propose that Cabinet approves the terms of reference that is on paragraph 13. On paragraph 3, the first bullet point, I'm going to suggest, can we remove the wording closure on 28th of August 2020 and just put the wording clauses? So it reads, the member working group asks that Cabinet ensure that all business grant payments are maximised before the grant closes, and that the amount of unused funds is either nil or minimised. And that sounds reasonable. And then if you want to add a later bullet point, that the Cabinet recognises the amount of work that's been done by the Council and central government. Yes, please. And then the last point, the approval in principle of temporary increase of resources. And then 4, we ask that the leader lobbies the Lancashire Economic Partnership, local MPs and government departments for funding. I'd like to move all that.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Do you want me to read them all out?
I'll second that.
Yeah.
Oh, right, thank you.
Okay, I think we're all singing off the same hymn sheet with this one. So, is that agreed? Great, thank you. Okay.
Hey, thanks for that. Yeah, thank you. Just bear with me a second. So we're up to agenda item 8, the budget outturn report 2019-20, and I'll hand over to Councillor Matthew Tomlinson.
Thank you, Chair. This report outlines the Council's financial position as at the 31st of March 2020. I think it's important to recognise that this is the budget that was set by the previous administration prior to the elections in May, and yet all in all, most of the variations that you'll see, certainly in the revenue account, the variations are relatively small. As with any budget, it is a prediction on where you think you'll be and what you think you will spend, and there will always be differences. Certainly across the staffing though, which is our major expense, the variances are really quite small and tend to balance themselves out. I certainly don't intend to go through this line by line. It is a very thorough report, but if you'll forgive me, I'll just do a potted highlights. I'm sure members will be gratified to see that actually our surplus is greater than was budgeted for. In fact, it's significantly greater, some £900,000. And at the top of page 62, which is the second page of this report, you can see a summary of the main variances. By far the biggest variance is surplus business rates and Section 31 grants. If anybody wants to ask any technical questions on that, I will happily defer to our Section 151 officer, because the business rates regime is notoriously complicated, and will refer to pooling and not pooling, and subsidies and not subsidies, and payments from previous years. However, the headline naturally is that we got in £759,000 more than was budgeted in the budget that I referred to earlier. The other significant income we've got is surplus in the garden waste income. We were a little late to the party, if you like, on charging for garden waste. A lot of other Lancashire authorities did that earlier, and the evidence from other authorities was that as the scheme became embedded, numbers did fall off a little. So you would introduce it, people would sign up, and then in other authorities, people didn't renew on the second and third years. In fact, residents in South Ribble did renew in this is year 2, and in fact a little more, some new people came on board. The upshot is we got in £162,000 more than was budgeted for. It's important to note that that is a one-off, because one of the things that we have since done is reduce the charge from £30 a year to 25, and that will take away that surplus, but we're still expected to break even on that, and that's what we budgeted for next year. Also in that table you'll see a deficit in investment property rental income. So this is the income we get in from our industrial units, shops and offices that we own. When the COVID pandemic broke, we took a very quick decision to not charge any of our tenants rent in March, April or May. You'll see what that cost us. That cost us £140,000 in March. So you should expect to see that carry on into next year's budget too. The next line, the leisure campus abortive costs. That refers to the fact members who were here before the election will recall there was quite a lot of money in the budget to pay for a proposed leisure centre on the land adjacent to the civic centre. Not long after the elections, it became quite clear that the funding that went to the budget meeting simply didn't match up the reality of what was needed to deliver any leisure centre on that site. And so it's quite clear now that is not going to happen, certainly in the short term. Now, some £530,000 worth of work had been commissioned by the previous administration to look at the feasibility of that work. Some of that work, ground surveying on that land, we're still going to keep in the capital budget, because we may well deliver some sort of building on that land, and we will be able to apportion those costs to the development of a capital asset. But clearly some of those costs will not be able to be aligned to a capital asset on that land, and so will have to be paid for out of the revenue budget. So that's what that is. It is an accountancy terminology, because if people look at the capital programme in one of the appendices to this report, you'll see that £230,000 has been taken out of capital spending, and it's because we've had to charge that to revenue. But that will come out of our accounts this year rather than being paid for over the next 25 years, which we were hoping to do. If we go further on, you'll see all the revenue costs are broken down there with the variances. Again, I think that the variances are pleasingly small in the main. It would be strange if there were no variances, but overall they are relatively small. We have included Appendix A, which I've asked for, which is new, but it is now going to all the scrutiny committees as well, and that's identifying staff vacancies, because in the past there has been an accusation that this council carried a lot of staff vacancies just to try and balance the books. We're not going to do that, so if we have a vacancy, we'll be open about that. We'll share that with members, and we'll also explain in this report what we intend to do about those vacancies. And then again, with the capital programme, again, a pleasing amount of the capital programme has been delivered, and where it hasn't, there are explanations as to what we intend to do about it. And finally, Appendix C is about moving some of the reserves around. Going right back to the very beginning, and please forgive me if you're reading this on a tablet, because that's probably not the best way to talk to a report, but going right back to the very beginning, there are some recommendations as to what we do with this excess cash that we find ourselves with. We normally put money away every year for the borough elections reserve. While we've got this money, we are suggesting we top that up, and then we'll not be topping it up in subsequent years. Transfer 173,000 to the restructure cost reserve. We're still doing a lot of work and pursuing shared services, so there may be some restructuring that needs to be doing within the council, and those inevitably come with costs. So that is to just bolster that reserve. Unspent grant income and unspent expenditure budgets that we do intend to spend in years coming up. That's 270,000 and 166,000. We'll transfer cash into those reserves. And then the biggest chunk, some £631,000, we are proposing we transfer into the business retention reserve. We've already heard tonight about how the COVID pandemic is affecting our borough. There are some predictions that business nationally could contract by up to 14% in coming years. If that was to happen to our business rates collection, that would be a significant blow to the income of this council. We already have quite an amount of money in our business rates retention reserve, and that was built up by the previous administration, but that was about different uncertainties about business rates retention. I've referred to the pooling, and we were getting 75% back from the government, and then they reduced it to 50%, and nobody knew what was happening. So the previous administration did build up a reserve, but this 631,000, I think, is a prudent step to take with the uncertainties that we now face. I do want to flag up both to, and I have already discussed this informally with the Section 151 officer, I do think we're now at a stage where we do need to have a look at our reserves. We do have a lot of cash, and we do need to have a real think about where this cash sits for the next 3 to 5 years. And I'm sure it's something I'll be returning to in cabinet meetings over the coming year. But that is it for me, a fairly healthy financial position, a relatively pleasing outturn in terms of what we've delivered against what we said we'd deliver, and a clear view as to what we should do with the excess cash. I'm happy to try and take any questions. I will give fair warning that if they are technical or detailed, I may well be deferring, as I said, to our Section 151 officer, who I know is listening in. But other than that, I'm happy to propose those recommendations to Cabinet. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Matthew, for a very comprehensive report. I like the report. I think the report is presented in a really good way, with all the detail, as we keep saying that we will produce. Warts and all, every bit of detail gets produced for members and for the public to see, and it's really pleasing to see that. Could I just ask one thing, Matt, before we move on? There's also, obviously, you were in front of scrutiny the other day, and there's a supplementary list of recommendations that came from the scrutiny committee. Could you just go through those quickly with us, please?
Yes, so there was a supplementary agenda. tablet difficulties. Thank you for that. There is a supplementary agenda that was published today. There are some recommendations. This did, and forgive me, scrutiny members, this did go before scrutiny on Monday, and questions were asked and responded to, and I think it's 4 recommendations, 5 recommendations, and I'll now defer to the leader to read them out. I'm happy to accept all those recommendations. Oh, thank you. Good old paper. The recommendations of the Scrutiny Committee are that panel thanks the Cabinet Member and the Section 151 officer for their detailed report and answering the questions. 2, that panel requests further information on the reasons for the reduction in trade waste income. That panel welcomes the inclusion of the staff and vacancies within the report and the improvement in staff vacancy rates over the previous 12 months. 4, that panel feels reassured about the staffing situation in the Gateway Customer Service Centre and asks for an update on recruitment in vacant posts to be provided to the panel. And 5, that panel asks for a more in-depth narrative on progress with the capital projects to be provided in future reports. Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew, and sorry for dropping your note there. I only decided to do it when I couldn't find it myself because trying to use the tablets. So we will get there, though. Will it not? There you go. So we've all tried tonight not to print, as you've noticed, the agenda's off, but it's anyway, we'll get there. So are you happy to move those recommendations as well, Matthew? Yeah.
I am happy indeed, yeah.
Right, thank you. So just a couple of brief points from me. I was going to discuss in a little bit more detail with you tonight the write-off on the leisure. I'm going to leave that to council because, and I think that the concern we have there is not so much the write-down. It's more the process of how we're aware that the previous administration were aware in the December of 2018 that the costs has escalated significantly. Papers were written for the Cabinet to be viewed in the January of the 2019, and those papers were pulled. And it was never reported to council that the cost has escalated, nor was it reflected in the budget that the cost has escalated. And between the January and May of 2019, a further £533,000 was expended on the site next door, when we believe, well, that the evidence that we've been presented was that the statutory officers in the Cabinet were aware of the costs. That's what we need to look at, Matt, and if I could ask you to look at that before council, because these are what we have a duty to our residents to ensure that they follow the correct processes were followed there. Other than that, the business rate reserves, as you're right, there is a significant sum there now. I've read today that the Chancellor is considering putting business rates up. What the impact that will have, I do not know, but it is a huge risk for the council. I think we're all aware of that. But generally, as you say, we'll be pleased. I think the Cabinet will be pleased to see you review into the reserves generally, Matt, because the impact of COVID is most certainly going to hit next year's numbers quite significantly. I don't think any local authority can get away from that. And again, I can't remember if you actually specifically said this, but I know you're looking at the capital programme as well, moving forward, just to fully ensure that everything that is proposed is affordable. But other than that, does any member of the Cabinet have any further points they wish to raise or questions they wish to ask Matthew? Got any members not on Cabinet have any questions? Alan, Councillor Ogilvie, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Can I firstly thank the Cabinet member for this report? There's a lot of useful and detailed information contained within it. The one point I did want to make this evening, and Cabinet member did allude to the capital programme. When I look at the figures here, we started, before I go on to the figures, I'll just remind the leader and myself, when serving on the Governance Committee, used to, on an annual basis, lament at the percentage delivery on capital expenditure. And in those days, it was generally 60-70% rather than 100% of budget. Figures on this report for the past year, we started off the year with a budget of some 13 million in the capital programme. The outturn by Q3 was just over 4 million, or just some 30%-ish of that total budget for expenditure. And indeed, in the final quarter, that fell by a further million to just over 3 million, or just over 20% of the original capital expenditure budget. I wonder if the Cabinet member could give us the story there as to what's happened, and is that performance of some disappointment or indeed embarrassment to her?
Thanks, Alan. Matthew?
Sorry, you were going to answer.
No, I'm happy. I'm not embarrassed, Alan. The significant, some of the significant sums are around the leisure facility, and let's be bluntly honest. And I promise I'm not trying not to be political here. We had a lot of catching up to do and a lot of work to do in response to what we inherited. We've got to a position now where I'm more comfortable that we're on top of everything. That said, the capital programme has clearly been impacted now post this report as well. So I'm not, the numbers and the progress isn't probably going to be wonderful, shall we say, when we start getting the Q1 monitoring report through. But no, I think that it's detailed, Alan. In every bit of detail there is what slipped and why it slipped. But Matthew, have you anything more to add?
I don't really. I mean, obviously, the idea was we were going to spend a significant amount of money on a new leisure centre that we've just not spent at all. But I think, generally speaking, I mean, let's be honest, this hasn't been affected by COVID, the capital programme here, because this was what had happened before. In general, and I'll hold my hand up as Chair of Scrutiny, I lamented the lack of delivery. I think what's really important on a capital programme is where things haven't been delivered, you can see the reasons why and what the plan is. As for the capital programme we proposed in February, I'm afraid that that's going to look very, very different indeed, because there will be some capital projects that simply will not get delivered this year, and indeed may have to be rethought altogether. But I think his question was, am I embarrassed by this report? No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm not embarrassed about new playgrounds. I'm not embarrassed about the stuff that we've done on green links. I think the staff have delivered a pretty good job, and I'm happy to commend it to council.
Thanks, Matthew. Any other questions from members? Damien? Sorry, Councillor Bretherton.
Yep, thank you. It's just regarding the surplus income. There's a surplus in business rates and Section 31 grants funding. I just wondered if we could have for my benefit mainly, a description of what a Section 31 grant is and how many were received and how was that money not spent? Yeah.
Damien, be careful with this. Matthew? Yeah.
I just wonder if James could produce a briefing note on this, rather than answer the question and a third of the council get to hear it. It might be useful just to deliver. I'm going to challenge you now, James, to deliver something that fits on a side of A4 that just breaks it all down. What income we've had, where it comes from, why it's more than we thought. Because some of it is we've not paid into a pool that we thought we were going to pay in. Some of it is extra money that we didn't know we were going to get. Some of it relates to business activity from 2 years ago. I wouldn't even, I think it would be wrong to ask James to try and deliver something, although I'm sure he could, off the back of his, out of the back of his head now. But I just think it might be useful for all members to get a briefing note as to what this figure is, where it's come from, and why it's so significantly more than we thought it would be. Sorry, James.
Yeah, do you want to speak, James?
I'm happy to do that.
Yep.
Go on, do you want to just give us a very brief update just on the just Section 31, if you can explain to Councillor Bretherton what that is, and then if you can then follow it up with a briefing note would be very helpful, because it is complex, very complex for councillors, I get that.
No problem. The Section 31 grants are received for a number of different reasons, but predominantly for business rates. Table 4, which is agenda page 68, does break down the variances on business rates, and that makes up the majority of the variances which are in Table 1. Exclusively for Section 31 grants, South Ribble has experienced a growth in its business rates base over the years, which is in some ways quite unusual to other councils in Lancashire. Some of those businesses that come to South Ribble will gain from having government support. So they may be small businesses that don't actually pay business rates. To the council, that's a bit of a problem because due to a government policy, a business will move into South Ribble but won't pay any business rates. And the government has been increasingly generous over the years with things like small business rates, but it might be rural rate relief or something like that. As a result of that, the council won't receive the cash from these businesses, but the government instead compensates the council with Section 31 grants instead. So the more generous the government is with various initiatives, the more Section 31 grants the council receives. So the variance there will be partly due to that and partly due to the fact that this is the first year that we are in, and the only year it seems that we will be in the pilot, and due to the fact that we keep 75% of the business rates, we keep a lot more of the Section 31 grants, and it was hard to budget in January for exactly what was going to happen this year, and that will also explain some of that variance. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that's yeah. I think so, James. Yeah, and we will do the briefing note, Damien. And I think even senior councils like Councillor Mrs. Smith, and it is a challenge to understand. It is a real black art and how the team possibly. It becomes, and I hate saying this, a bit of a guess sometimes as well. And you just give best efforts to where you get to. But as long as he underestimates rather than overestimates, we're in a better position, aren't we? But we'll get that paper to you. Any other questions, Councillor Smith?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. With regard to the business rate retention fund, I mean, it's there for several reasons, obviously, but one of the big reasons is the appeals of business rate revaluation. As a payer of business rate for many years, I do understand it, and most businesses will make an appeal. Now the council is subject to paying that appeal money back under the rules and on the pooling that we've been in. It would be nice to know how many appeals are outstanding, because they could be significant, they might not be. I know Waitrose, I think at one stage were putting in a big appeal which could have been hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds. So it'd be nice just to have an update on the appeals, pending appeals figures. And just moving on then, and I am not going to let the false statements of the leisure cost go, and I'm quite looking forward to the council meeting where we can hopefully have a proper debate on this. But the statements of the cost of and it was the same the other day at the scrutiny meeting, the cost of building a leisure centre significantly more untrue. That is not a statement that's not.
Councillor Smith, I wholeheartedly disagree given the evidence that's been presented.
Can you let me finish, Chair? You're butting in. I didn't butt in when you were talking. You should not butt in when I'm talking, because I haven't finished.
You've said something, Councillor Smith, that I wholeheartedly disagree with, but you may carry on.
Thank you very much. It is not true, and that lie is being perpetuated permanently.
Right, I'm not letting you continue if you state that I have just stated a lie.
I didn't say you stated a lie. I said the lie is being perpetually being brought forward. That there's the significant cost of a leisure centre made it unable to be built. Incorrect. That is not incorrect. You made an incorrect statement with regard to the budget. The budget and the medium-term financial strategy was correct.
We'll produce the evidence, Councillor Smith, and people and members can take their own view. The evidence is clear.
The evidence is not clear, Chair, because we have got other evidence. And having a look at the internal audit, some of the views of the internal audit are very, very questionable. And we'll leave it at that for the next meeting. Thank you, Chair.
But this is just, is it not, Councillor Smith, this is just what we said in council, rather than accepting that things were done incorrectly, what happens is the validity of the independent audit is challenged. The evidence, what I can say, is the evidence that has been presented to the new administration is absolutely clear and it's substantiated. Councillor Mrs Smith.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I'm not going to really go into the ins and outs of the leisure centre, but I will just say that having gone into it in great detail and done, one of your words, a forensic analysis of what has gone on, I've come to a different conclusion that you have come to, and I will look forward as well to the council meeting, because some of the things that have actually been stated are incorrect. Having said that, I'm going to move on to my questions. It's a question on page 75. I wonder if Councillor Tomlinson could help me. It's about disabled facilities grants. I see that we've received 691,000 and we paid out 691,000, but we had an opening balance of 314,000. And I'm just wondering, and we've got now a closing balance of opening balance 315, closing balance 314. I just wonder why we haven't spent that money, because I can recall there's always been a huge list of disabled facilities required, always outstanding. I know that there are sometimes reasons why, either we don't get the full statement from the county with the physiotherapist or something like that, but I can't imagine that there has been so many difficulties that we wouldn't have spent that extra money, and this is something that is always very much needed. So if you could, I don't expect you to give me the answer now, I'd just like you to, if you could at some point, let me know why there is that we're carrying that 314,000. And going on to page 77, which is the staff vacancies, and it's got planning, compliance and monitoring officer. I think it's about halfway down under planning and property. And we've got vacant since the 1st of August 2019, new structure implemented. The post is being kept vacant to assess whether it's required in the long term. Agency support now being procured. I know we have got some agencies support, which is more than welcome. The gentleman that is doing that has been with us before and was very, very good at it. We then had a situation where our enforcement officer left. I'm just wondering, are we going to replace him plus someone else, or are we just going to continue with the agency, or are we going to try and procure the agency gentleman? If you could find that out for me, I'd be grateful, because we do have a considerable number of problems, particularly in my ward, with enforcement, which is a problem for us. Thank you.
We'll be able to get that information for you. The DFGs, it may well be, because this is what's been experienced in previous years, that actually money comes available during the year through the Better Care Fund that comes in quite late, and therefore it might have been followed through, but I don't know that definitely, so we'll get that to you. And then in terms of the planning, compliance and monitoring officer, I think one of the things that was wanting to be considered was whether it was needed in the long term, because of once the systems and processes are set up, it may be that actually it can be picked up by the enforcement officers, but there's no plan to reduce capacity if it's needed. So again, we'll give you an update on where we're up to in terms of the recruitment vacant posts.
Yeah, and thanks, Chris, for his intervention there. Obviously, any information that any member wants, we can provide them with. It just strikes me. We started off with a balance of 315,000 and we're closing with a balance of 314,000. Why we're carrying that balance, I'm going to be honest, I do not know. But we've spent the money that we got in during the year. So perhaps there's an accountancy explanation, but I shouldn't get involved in conjecture. We'll get you the correct answer.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew. Just one point from me, Margaret. In respect to the leisure, the statements that we make are not our views. They're the views of the statutory officers and the internal auditors. And I just want to make that absolutely clear. And the fact of the matter is that we have seen it. There was a paper prepared for the Cabinet meeting of January 2019. It was sent to the portfolio holder in the December. That was pulled from the Cabinet meeting and it was never reported to Council. The numbers that were in that report were not reflected in the then proposed budget by the previous administration. Subsequently, there has been a lot more work done into the capital costs on the leisure facility, and the numbers that were reported to the administration at that point have been validated by a third party. We'll take it to Council. Any other questions?
You mentioned the audit report, which has got a nil assurance on it. I've been through that report very, very carefully, and believe me, I have found an awful lot of discrepancies in it, and that's why I say I am concerned. An audit report should be independent, we understand that, but sometimes if things have not been actually gone through in detail and only a certain avenue has been gone down and the other avenue has been blocked off, and the paperwork that should have gone through that avenue has not been fed into the report, you're then getting a skewed view. And that's what I'm saying. And I have looked at it in very great detail. I'm not trying to make political points here, because there are some things here that I think fundamentally need clearing out of the way before we can all move forward. And therefore, I would like to bring that to the attention of the Council so that we are all clear.
Happy for you to do that, Councillor Mrs Smith. Chris?
And I was just going to say, I think that I sat at the back at the last full council meeting when speeding back, isn't it? I sat at the back when the annual governance statement was being debated at full council, and I heard everybody acknowledge and say we need to make sure that governance really works at the council, and I think that's everyone's committed to that. And so one part of that is making sure that internal audit as a function works and is well respected. So my suggestion would be that actually if there's issues, and you are right that there is always a risk in internal audit, and there is generally processes in place to avoid this from happening, but because there is always a risk that someone looks at certain parts of evidence and doesn't examine others. So if there's anything that you think where people might have had a narrower approach than should have been taken, I'd suggest that we could set up a meeting for you to be able to discuss it with the monitoring officer, and he can then have a look at those other elements to make sure that internal audit is providing that internal assurance.
I will happily do that. Thank you.
And I'd ask Councillor Mrs Smith, if you're not happy with the internal audit, then you need, and you have evidence that support your argument, then it should be presented as quickly as possible. Okay, I look forward to it. Any more questions? Any more questions? Okay, Matthew, do you want to go through the recommendations?
Yep, so the recommendations as itemised on page 61 of the Cabinet report are that Cabinet notes, reviews and comments on the contents of this report, that Cabinet approves the following transfers to reserves from the surplus in 1920. Transfer 160,000 to the Borough Elections Reserve, transfer 173,000 to the Restructure Costs Reserve, transfer 270,000 to the Other Reserve in relation to unspent grant income, transfer 166,000 to the Other Reserve in relation to unspent expenditure budgets and surplus income that will be needed in 2021, and transfer the remaining surplus of 631,000 to the Business Rates Retention Reserve. And finally, that Cabinet approves the reprofiled budgets for the capital programme, including underspends to be carried forward as detailed in Appendix B. and I'm happy to move those.
And with the addition as well, Matthew, of the accepting the scrutiny committee's comments
Yeah,
as well.
so I didn't know whether we do that under, can I do that now?
Yep.
Yeah, I'll do that now then.
Thank you, and I'm happy to support that. All those in favour? Good, it's unanimous. Thank you. So, moving on, agenda item number 9, the stock condition survey. Councillor Matthew Tomlinson.
And forward proposals to commission a stock condition survey. As I alluded to in the budget report, we own quite a wide portfolio of assets, buildings, shops, warehouses, offices that we rent out. We haven't done a full condition survey, well, as far as I can find out, certainly not in recent history. We've always had a budget for repairs and maintenance, very rarely spent it, and in fact our whole response to asset maintenance has been a reactive rather than a proactive one. So one of our tenants rings up and says a roof's leaking, we go out and fix the roof. But from year to year we've no idea, and we've had no idea about what might be forthcoming, where we might need to plan to spend money. And if we're brutally honest, whether some of our insurance cover has been appropriate or not has to be questioned. So members will know that one of the things that I pushed for when I took over this portfolio was an asset review. That's taken longer than I would have liked for various reasons, but is now in train, and I'm hoping to come back to Cabinet with something on that very soon. But as part of that work as well, I'm now asking Cabinet to approve that we do a full survey of all our assets to see what their physical condition is like, and to be able to plan for the future in terms of future maintenance. For me, it's just good business. I'm not quite sure. I mean, it's not for me to comment on why it hasn't happened in the past, but it hasn't. You know, no matter what anybody may well say, it hasn't happened in the past. And I just think, you know, if we're talking about good governance, good business, running 90 odd properties in a professional manner, then we need to do this stock condition survey and ascertain a baseline. So there are some recommendation? Hang on, 2 recommendations. 2, one at the bottom of page 87, that we approve the commissioning of a stock condition survey. The money has already been approved in our revenue budget, and that we approve the commencement of an open tender process to appoint a suitable contractor to carry out that survey. I just think we need to get it done, Mr. Chairman.
We certainly need to get it done, Matthew. Thank you. It's again, you know, when we discussed this, didn't we? The first thing you think about is how on earth have we valued our assets over the short and medium term for the insurance, as you mentioned. If we've got no idea of the condition, how we set maintenance programmes when we don't know the condition of the assets? And clearly, it's something that should be done often and hasn't been. We won't get into the ins and outs of why it hasn't been done, but it hasn't, and I'm more than happy to support your proposals. Have you any idea, Matthew, how long it's going to take to undertake? Obviously, it's a significant job. Neil, how long will it take?
Subject to agreement by Cabinet tonight, well, obviously we need to go through the procurement process. I'd like to think work can start this side of Christmas on the full stock condition survey.
How long will it take? 3 months, 6 months?
Yeah, it will take about 3 months to get through all the properties properly. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from anyone on Cabinet? Daniela?
Can I just ask, I suppose, the Cabinet member, it sounds like there's 2 things, the stock condition and the asset. And I'm just concerned that other councils maybe invest in their stock and then realise that it's not an asset anymore. So they've spent money on something and then they decide it's, you know, I'm just wondering if the 2 can be looked at together so that we don't spend money on something that we don't really want anymore, if you know what I mean.
So I did refer to this being done at the same time as an asset review. That's the thing that one of the first things I asked for, and I apologise for the delay. But the asset review will look at all the stuff that we own and ask questions like, does it get us a decent return? How does this asset contribute to our corporate priorities? Why does the council own this asset? All those really fundamental questions that will be done as part of the asset review. The stock survey will be separate, and clearly if the stock survey says we need to spend 100,000 on this building, but the asset review says we're not quite sure why the council even owns this building, then that'll be a question that we need to ask at the time.
Thanks, Matthew. Thanks, Daniela. Any other questions? Members not? Councillor Clark?
I will agree with what most of what Councillor Thomason has said, but as he well knows, I've been a critic of the ineffective asset database for managing our assets effectively, and I've been fobbed off even with promises over a long period of years that it will be reviewed and an effective database will be set up. Staff changes have complicated that issue. It has never progressed. Now, it's something that I pushed for some years, and he knows as chairman of the Scrutiny Committee, I mentioned it on several times when he was asking me questions, or some of his members were asking me questions. So I think it's not just reviewing the stock condition, it's actually having an effective database which will enable us to make decisions, not just about conditions, but what we do with the assets themselves. Thank you.
Thanks, he's right. I did push for this as Chair of Scrutiny, and Councillor Clark had the pleasure of coming before me on several occasions and being asked about this. He is absolutely right. It is something that we need. We won't get fobbed off. We'll get this done.
Thanks, Matthew. Any other questions, members? Councillor Ogilvie and then Councillor Mrs Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's just a comment on commercial acumen in relation to this. We're going out to an open tender process, but we've openly advertised what the budget is. I suspect that most of the responses you get will be nearer 100,000 than 20,000.
Neil?
We went provisionally, because we went out and talked to the market about what a potential cost of a condition survey would cost. So we used those quotes that we got in as the basis of the budget that was asked for as part of the revenue programme to go forward.
Thank you. But point noted. Councillor Mrs Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the reasons for the decision, it says that there has not been a condition survey undertaken for some time. I think I know I do, because I've seen the report, I've got the paperwork at home, that Cushman's and Wakeman actually did a condition survey in 2016, which I know at some point, that was a draft one in July 2016, and it actually detailed the various assets that we have, including the leisure centres and the places at Walton Summit and the ones at Moss Side and various other places. I'm just wondering if this is going to be a completely new one, or are we going to refer back to that one, and has some work been done on the one that was done in 2016? Because I seem to recall it actually went before scrutiny on a number of occasions. So that condition survey was quite comprehensive, and I'm just wondering how much work has actually gone forward from that particular survey. Thank you.
So to my recollection, that stock survey did go in front of scrutiny, but it wasn't a comprehensive one. It did look in detail at our leisure centres, but in terms of the rest of the asset portfolio, it certainly wasn't comprehensive. And even if it was, it's 4 years ago. Even if it was, and time has passed, and I can't believe that we know for a fact that in the last 4 years our leisure centres have deteriorated and now need more money spending on them than they did in 2016. But to my certain recollection, that report that Councillor Smith refers to did not include all 92 assets that this council owns.
Okay. Neil, do you want to add anything to that?
Councillor Smith is quite right. There was a condition survey of the leisure centres taking place in 2016, and that has helped us inform a lot of evidence about what money is required to spend on the leisure centres, and helped inform the council report that we brought last September. The report beyond the leisure centres was not seeing a detailed or a detailed condition survey for all 92 premises that we own.
Thank you.
Could I just come back? There was 2 surveys done in 2016, one for the leisure centres and one for the rest of the stock. There were two totally different surveys, and the one from the Cushman and Wakefield certainly has the assets that are at Moss Side and at Watton, because I read only a little bit of it the other day, and it had a comment about whether it was worth keeping or not. So it must have been a reasonably comprehensive one. Thank you. It's just, I'm only asking the question, has something been done with it? That's all.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Phil Smith.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, that report was done, and you will know that, Chair, because both of us were sat on that asset working group review or whatever it was that Councillor Clark was chairman of. Both of us attended those meetings. Those reports were handed out at those meetings, and whilst I know it didn't cover. So you're shaking your head. Were you not there? All right, thank you. And whilst it didn't cover every asset, it covered the major assets. And I think it was a start and a working document, and it did cover assets, that how much money we wanted spending on them, whether it was worth keeping as part of the asset portfolio of the borough or whether it was not. So, and it just brought forward various recommendations. Thank you, Chair.
There's rewriting history, and there's rewriting history. I have a recollection of individual items being looked at. I have absolutely certain there was no detailed condition survey, and that has been supported tonight by both the portfolio holder and and Councillor Clark, actually, yeah, and the who was your portfolio holder, who disagrees with what you've just said, Councillor Smith. But let's look. You're rewriting history. A condition survey needs to be done. It's been put forward by Councillor Tomlinson. I'm happy to second it, and it will be carried out. Councillor Titherington.
I was just wondering if it was carried out in 2016. Perhaps the administration was led by Councillors Margaret Smith at that time, up until May 2019. So perhaps they could give us the answer to what happened to that assets survey then.
I wasn't around from 2016.
Right, okay, let's have some order through the chair, please. And perhaps if you've got reports, Councillor Mrs Smith, then maybe you should give them to the monitoring officer again. Councillor Matthew Tomlinson.
I do try my utmost to be diplomatic in these meetings, and I'm not one. I do try my utmost. There has been no full stock condition survey done for a number of years. So far back to doing a full one, I haven't been able to find one. So I refrain from saying we've never done one, because I can't prove that, but I have not been able to find a full stock condition survey. Detailed work was done on the leisure centre, leisure centres, absolutely it was, and some other assets were looked at. But even Councillor Clark has agreed with me how frustrated he was in trying to get something done. It needs doing. And whether you thought about doing it but didn't get round to doing anything about it or not is irrelevant. Just for pure good business, this needs doing. So I am proposing it to Cabinet. I'm happy to support the recommendations.
Thanks, Matthew. I'm happy to second that. I will bring this to a swift conclusion now. Can we have a vote, please? Unanimous. Thank you very much. And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings an end to tonight's proceedings. And stay safe. See you all soon. And I think the next meeting of the Cabinet is the middle of September. Thank you. Good night.